While all my friends were chasing 4-year degrees and climbing corporate ladders, I was chasing the perfect dovetail joint. For the better part of 5 years, I funneled every spare cent I earned into tools and lumber, learning the art of carpentry from the ground up. My singular ambition was to launch my own custom carpentry business. A few months ago, that dream finally took shape. It's not much to look at yet. I call it Cornerstone Carpentry. The company headquarters is my garage, and the corporate vehicle is an old sputtering Chevy truck that groans every time I turn the key. My equipment is a motley crew of second-hand tools I painstakingly restored myself. A heavy-duty table saw from a retired woodworker, a set of well-worn chisels, and the most basic drill money could buy. But they were mine and they worked. That was all I needed to begin. I even designed and printed a stack of simple business cards myself. In the beginning, my clientele consisted of my mom, my uncle, and a neighbor who needed a wobbly chair fixed. I wasn't really earning a living. Most of the work was done for the cost of materials or whatever they could spare. I knew I had to forge a reputation from scratch. I repeated a mantra to myself every morning. Treat every project like it's for a showroom. That's how you get your name out there. One sweltering Indiana afternoon, I was in my garage workshop, meticulously cleaning sawdust from my table saw, wondering if a real paying client would ever materialize. My phone vibrated against the workbench. The number was unfamiliar. "Hello," I answered, trying to sound more professional than I felt. A woman's voice, smooth but direct, replied, "Hi. I picked up your business card at the local lumberyard. I'm looking to have a deck built. Is that a service you provide?" I straightened my back, my heart kicking into a higher gear. "Yes, absolutely. I could come by tomorrow to take a look and give you a quote if that works for you." She gave me her address, her tone calm and assured. After we hung up, I just stared at the phone for a long moment. This was it. My first real commission. The next morning, I loaded my essential tools into the back of the Chevy. My pulse was a frantic drum against my ribs as I pulled onto her street. It was a neighborhood of stately brick homes and immaculate sprawling lawns. The kind of place where a crooked mailbox would be a scandal. Her house was tasteful and grand, exuding an air of quiet wealth. This was the kind of client whose standards would be sky-high. As I stepped out of my truck, I took a deep, steadying breath and told myself, just do the work. Be the professional you want to be. I walked up the stone path and rang the doorbell. After a few moments, the door opened. My first impression of her is etched in my memory. She looked to be in her early 40s, tall and poised, dressed in simple linen pants and a cream-colored blouse that spoke of understated elegance. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a loose, effortless style. She wore no makeup that I could see, save for a hint of color on her lips and simple gold earrings. "Hi, I'm Victoria," she said, her smile genuine and warm. "You must be Daniel." "Yes, ma'am. Thank you for calling me." "There's no need for ma'am," she said with a light laugh. "Just Victoria is fine." She led me through her pristine home and out to the backyard. She pointed to a sad, dilapidated structure clinging to the back of the house. "As you can see," she began, a note of frustration in her voice, "this has seen far better days. The last person I hired to work on it just disappeared halfway through." I nodded, taking it all in. The wood was gray and splintered, and several boards were visibly rotting. "I like things to be done right," she added, her gaze fixed on the mess. I stepped onto the old deck, testing a board with my foot. It groaned in protest. I took mental notes, my mind already disassembling the shoddy work and envisioning a new solid structure in its place. "I'll make sure it's built to last," I promised, looking her in the eye. I got to work right away. The demolition was a brutal, sweaty affair. The Indiana sun beat down relentlessly, and within minutes, my t-shirt was soaked through. My hammer and pry bar became extensions of my arms as I tore apart the old neglected wood. At one point, I glanced up and saw her standing on the patio, watching me with a curious expression. I offered an awkward wave and continued my work. About an hour later, as I was hauling the last of the splintered lumber to my truck, she walked over. I straightened up, wiping my forehead with the back of my glove. "That looks like hard work," she said, her eyes surveying the now empty space where the old deck had been. "You really get right to it." "Thank you. I believe in doing a job thoroughly from start to finish." Then, with a playful smirk, she tilted her head and said the words that would stick with me for a long time. "Be careful. I tend to get attached to people who work hard." I let out a short surprised laugh, caught off guard and unsure if she was merely joking or being serious. "Keep that in mind." She smiled warmly. "I'll send the payment for the demolition through your website, but I have a feeling I'll be seeing you again soon for the new build." I packed up my tools, waved goodbye, and drove away, feeling a sensation that had been absent for too long. Profound sense of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this little business of mine was actually going to succeed. 3 days passed. I filled the time with small repair jobs for friends of my parents, fixing fence posts, sanding down a warped door, even assembling some flat-pack furniture. I was still in the grinding phase, taking any work I could get my hands on. Every evening, I checked my email, hoping for a message from her, but there was nothing. I fought back the tendrils of discouragement, reminding myself you're just getting your start. Takes time. Then, on a Thursday morning, my phone rang. The caller ID read Victoria. I stared at the screen for a half-second before swiping to answer. "Hello. Hi, Daniel. It's Victoria. I hope this isn't a bad time." "Not at all. What can I do for you?" I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "I was so impressed with how quickly and cleanly you handled the demolition. I've reviewed the quote you sent for the new deck and I'd like to move forward. When can you start?" "I can be there tomorrow morning to start setting the footings if that works for you." "Perfect." I hung up, a wide grin spreading across my face. It wasn't just a one-off job. I had a major project, a real commission. I gathered my post-hole digger, bags of concrete mix, and framing tools, and headed over the next day. As I pulled into her driveway, I saw the empty space behind her house, a blank canvas waiting for me. I grabbed my tools and began the painstaking process of measuring and digging the holes for the concrete footings. The ground was hard clay, and the work was slow and arduous. I wanted to impress her again, not just for the paycheck, but because my name, my entire reputation was being built right here. After about 40 minutes of intense digging, I noticed Victoria standing nearby, her arms crossed loosely as she watched me work. She was dressed in casual athletic wear, her hair tied back, looking effortlessly chic. "You're certainly meticulous," she commented as I used my level to check the depth of a hole for the third time. "The foundation is everything," I said, pausing to catch my breath. "If this part isn't perfect, nothing else will be." She smiled. "Not everyone thinks that way." We chatted for a little while as I continued my work. It was light, easy conversation about the unpredictable Indiana weather, the neighborhood, and the string of unreliable handymen she dealt with in the past. I couldn't help but notice how at ease she seemed talking with me, a guy covered in dirt and sweat. As I finished pouring the last bag of concrete, she walked over, a look of satisfaction on her face. "Daniel, you've done it again. This is more thorough than I could have imagined." I smiled, genuinely proud of the solid foundation I'd laid. "Thank you, Victoria. I'm glad you're happy with it." Then she hesitated for a moment before speaking, a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. "I know this is last minute, but I made way too much pasta for dinner. Would you like to stay and eat? Just as a small thank you. You must be starving after all that digging." I blinked, completely caught off guard. It was highly unusual for a client to invite their contractor in for a meal. I wasn't sure what the proper etiquette was, but she offered me a warm, reassuring look as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "I'd love to, but I wouldn't want to impose," I replied politely. "Nonsense," she said, waving my concern away. "It's just dinner. Come on, take a break for once." Something in her tone made me relax. I nodded. "All right, thank you." I washed my hands and face at an outdoor spigot and followed her inside. Her home was even more beautiful up close, tasteful and modern, yet cozy with large windows that bathed the rooms in a soft, natural light. Victoria led me to the kitchen where a large island was already set for two. She had prepared a simple but delicious-smelling pasta with grilled chicken and a fresh salad. It smelled incredible. We sat and ate, and the conversation flowed more easily than I could have anticipated. She asked about my business, how I got started, and what my long-term goals were. I found myself telling her the unvarnished truth that I was barely breaking even, that some of my most crucial tools were borrowed, and that I dreamed of one day having a proper workshop and a small crew with a company truck that didn't backfire. "You've got a lot of drive," she said with a soft smile. "Most people your age don't have that kind of focus." I shrugged, feeling a bit embarrassed by her praise. "I'm just trying to build something for myself." After dinner, she opened a bottle of wine and offered me a glass. I politely declined, explaining that I still had to drive home. "I respect that," she nodded, her expression thoughtful. Not many would have said no. We sat there a little longer just talking. It was strange, but not uncomfortable. There was no pressure, just an unexpected sense of ease between two people from very different walks of life. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, I stood and thanked her for the meal. "Thank you, Victoria, for everything." She walked me to the door. "I meant what I said earlier. I'll probably find a few more things around here for you to fix soon," she teased lightly. I chuckled. "I look forward to it." Driving home that night, I kept replaying the evening in my head. Felt surreal. I didn't know what it all meant, if anything, but I couldn't shake the feeling that my life might be on the cusp of changing in ways I had never expected. The following week was a blur of sawdust, sweat, and long hours. I had managed to pick up a couple of smaller jobs in her neighborhood thanks to Victoria's glowing recommendation. Word of mouth travels quickly in communities like this, and people were impressed by my attention to detail. I was deeply grateful, but the work was physically exhausting. Then came Friday afternoon. I was wrapping up a small fence repair job when my phone buzzed. It was her. "Hey, Daniel, are you free tomorrow?" I wiped the sweat from my forehead and couldn't help but smile. "I think I can be." "What's on your mind?" "I was thinking about the deck. It's going to be beautiful, but the area around it could use some help. I was thinking some built-in planter boxes and maybe a bench." "I know you'll make it perfect." I agreed without a moment's hesitation. Victoria had quickly become my best-paying and most loyal client, and if I were being honest with myself, I genuinely looked forward to working at her place. There was a calming quality to her home, to her presence. The next morning, I loaded my miter saw and other tools into the truck and headed over. As I pulled into her driveway, I saw her standing on the front steps, waving with a smile. She was wearing casual jeans and a fitted white t-shirt. Simple, elegant, and effortlessly graceful as always. "Morning, Daniel," she greeted me. "Morning, Victoria. Where do you want me to start?" We walked around to the backyard together. The deck frame I had built stood solid and promising, but the surrounding area was a bit bare. "I know it's adding to the project," she admitted. "Take your time. I'm around if you need anything." I got to work immediately. The sun was high and unforgiving. Sweat poured down my back as I measured, cut, and assembled the cedar boards for the planter boxes. I worked for hours, losing myself in the rhythm of the craft. My mind focused solely on making each joint clean and tight. Occasionally, I would catch a glimpse of Victoria watching me from her kitchen window or stepping out onto the patio with a glass of iced tea to offer me. I declined at first, wanting to stay focused on finishing the job, but she was persistent. "Come on, Daniel," she said, handing me the cold, sweating glass. "Even the hardest workers need a break." I finally relented and sat on the edge of the deck frame for a few minutes, sipping the cold drink and looking out at the half-finished project. Victoria sat down a short distance away. "You're really dedicated to this," she said softly. I nodded. "It's my name on the business. I want people to remember me for good work." She smiled at that. "Well, you're certainly accomplishing that." I went back to work and finished the boxes and the bench by early evening. The additions transformed the space. They weren't just functional. They looked like an integral part of the design. The deck now felt complete even without the final surface boards. Victoria came out and gasped in delight. "Daniel, it's beautiful. You've outdone yourself again." "Thank you," I said, brushing sawdust from my jeans. Then came the moment that was becoming a familiar yet still surprising part of our dynamic. She paused, a hint of hesitation in her posture, then said, "Listen, I know this isn't standard, but would you like to stay for dinner? It's just me here, and I always make too much food. Consider it a small thank you." I hesitated, caught off guard, just as I had been before. This was not typical client behavior, but something about her casual tone and the genuine warmth in her eyes made it feel natural and right. "Sure," I replied after a moment. "Thank you." I packed up my tools and followed her inside once more. Her home felt different in the warm evening light, inviting and peaceful. Soft jazz music played from a speaker in the living room. The comforting aroma of roasted chicken and vegetables filled the air. We sat at the kitchen island again, and the conversation picked up right where we had left off the last time. I told her about growing up, about my decision to pursue carpentry instead of college, and the daily struggles of trying to run a business with almost no capital. Victoria listened with an intensity that made me feel truly heard, occasionally nodding and asking thoughtful questions. It didn't feel like an interview or a polite exchange. It felt like two people genuinely getting to know one another. "You're very brave, you know," she said at one point. "Most people wouldn't take that kind of risk." "I don't know if it's brave or just stubborn," I laughed. We finished dinner and she opened another bottle of wine. "I know you won't have any because you're driving, but I'm having a glass anyway," she teased playfully. I smiled. Fair enough. It was dark by the time I stood to leave. I thanked her again for everything. As I walked toward the front door, she followed me and rested her hand lightly on my arm for just a second. The touch was brief, but it sent a small jolt through me. "I meant what I said. You'll be hearing from me again," she said softly. I nodded, unsure of what to say. My heart was beating a little faster, though I couldn't pinpoint why. "Good night, Victoria." "Good night, Daniel." I stepped out into the cool night air, climbed into my truck, and sat there for a moment before starting the engine. Something about that evening felt significant, like the beginning of a new chapter. I didn't know what it was, but I decided not to overthink it. I just smiled to myself and drove home. The following weeks settled into a comfortable pattern. I continued to build my business, taking on any project I could find. My day started before sunrise and ended long after sunset. But every time Victoria called with a new idea for the house, a custom bookshelf here, a new mantelpiece there, I made sure to fit her in. It wasn't just because she paid well, but because I genuinely enjoyed the creative challenge, and if I was being honest, our conversations. Victoria was unlike any client I had ever had. There was an effortless quality to her, a calm confidence that was both intimidating and inviting. Every time I arrived at her place, she would greet me with that same warm smile that somehow made the impending hours of hard labor seem less daunting. On one of those late summer afternoons, she called again. "Hi, Daniel. I know you must be busy, but my back fence took a beating in that last storm. The gate is completely off its hinges. I'll be there tomorrow," I said without hesitation. The next day, I loaded my tools and some fresh cedar planks into my truck and headed over. The sun was blazing as I worked to rebuild the damaged section of the fence and rehang the heavy gate. As I was making the final adjustments, Victoria stepped outside with 2 cold bottles of water. "You're going to melt out here," she joked, handing one to me. "I've had worse," I grinned, wiping a sleeve across my sweaty brow. She lingered nearby, casually watching me work. Our conversations were still light and friendly, but I could feel a subtle shift in the dynamic between us, a deeper level of comfort and familiarity. I've never had anyone,